So in cases where, black families are split up more often statistically, this would have more to do with black men than white men. This isn't even a white issue if you want to look at statistics. Same with white men being imprisoned. Black people are imprisoned more often in America than white people. In these cases, I think that it's more important to hear what black MGTOW has to say than what white MGTOW has to say. Like, BIGJ XXX.
Before I get to the meat and the crux of this video, I must express my apologies. This video is supposed to be made back in September and October and November of 2023. You see, this video is supposed to be a sequel to the video I did to Princella entitled Are Men Are Capable of Love, to the Queen Maker Princella. This video is also a sequel to another video I made about a person named Sneeko that did last week, and how its toxicity of the manosphere and red pill spaces has breed a culture of, I would say, death to the younger generation. So there's about at least 10, 11 links below in the description box. So back in September, ShoeOnHead and made a video talking about, do men deserve to be lonely, expressing about the single male, the lonely male crisis that's being experienced in North America, and yes, in the Western society. See, a lot of people, the manosphere itself has attracted and became a bunch of angry young men who's fed into this belief that life is based upon the bottom dollar and some sort of materialistic worldview, and is forming a problem as we speak. We created a culture that is okay to stalk, harass, demean, and disrespect one's mother, one's grandmother, one's sister, girlfriend, wife, and even women who are strangers will face the lash of grievances, whether that's real or perceived. So the purpose of this video is to find a way to destroy the manosphere, to destroy the podcast masculinity channels, the ideology, to destroy it. and make things right again in this society. Why does the manosphere exist? That's been explained on my last video about this topic, but when it came to Sneeko and why the manosphere is a hate group. But let's go back since 1945. I would like to go back to 1945. Because from 1945 on up till today, the human advancement has changed to a point where it cannot go back before the start of the second or even the first World War. When the man has split the atom and harness its power, the less need for him to be dependent on within the household. His labor isn't dependent on. See, the woman has been told to marry because how our society is patriarchal. We're told, women are told, find a man with a job. And a lot of women across racial and economic lines has been pushed to marry men solely for having a job, good employment, or some type of wealth, rather than trying to seek fellowship and friendship with this man. And some women are at the time were in marriages that were joyless, possible joyless, and possible friendless marriages. So women had the option to date, had the option to their own finances, based upon that men are no longer, and it's a long story short. I know there's a lot of things I could fill in. That's why there's links in the description box. The advancement of the woman, because after 1945 and the labor, that the man is no longer dependent on the entire household, his income, his wealth, his labor is no longer dependent. The woman had gained a lot of freedom. And a lot of men don't understand what freedom really is. Because a lot of us had, because of our patriarchal ways for the last 200,000 years, we became very, very oppressive, for lack of a better word. Or should I say, we think that we own women. We own a woman's body and soul and what may have you. And because of the last 40 years, women had advanced farther than their great grandmothers, whereas the men have devolved themselves to a state of paralysis, into a state of soullessness. But how can we change that? You see, I believe that policy should change it, to change the mindset. See, what goes against the heterosexual male, and shout out to ShoeOnHead on that video she did back 4 or 5 months ago, where she said, and she's right on the money on this, the technology, because the technology of the last 80, 90, 100 years have changed the ability that less manpower is needed. Thus means that man is no longer needed for a certain task that needs to be addressed. Social media is also a problem, along with dating apps. Social media is a problem because of the podcast industry, the so-called masculine, the podcast masculine complex, industrial complex that feeds into young males' anger and sap them dry with false hopes of love and security. Dating apps has also fed into this illusion of what womanhood is, where the computer and that the monitor does not where the monitor does not has replaced the human connection between man and woman, and to men themselves and the women among themselves as well. But I mean, we also have a divide in our media. You know, the ever since the media has been so politicized, ever since the 1987 when Ronald Reagan destroyed the fairness doctrine. It created this dynamic where men we're so politicized that the lower class has been fed into the machine as cannon fodder for whatever the situation, whatever problem that flare up around the world. And also on top of this, we got low wages. Since my adult lifetime, I mean, anybody who is a millennial, anybody who was here who was born in the early 80s, like I have, I witnessed at least 4 or 5 recessions, and our generation is probably one of the few in Western civilization where we have back-to-back recessions, and is given a very toxic reality in front of us. And we also have that gateway to the housing crisis, along with the low wage jobs, and that also breeds to social alienation, because no education, no jobs, no housing. It breeds social alienation because we too busy trying to be wage slaves, or try to, so much we be on a survival, we try to fight for survival so much that we no longer have human connections with the next human being, within our families, within our communities, within our churches, especially in our churches, because we are now no longer religious, because the church itself I think though that might needs to be a solution to that as well, and that is a lack of community. Also, you know, because of the political divide and the left wing, the left wing in our society does not cater to the blue collar heterosexual male. It doesn't. The heterosexual man who's a blue collar worker does not have the voice in left wing politics. Long ago, we had people like Henry Wallace. He was the, I want to say, the 33rd vice president under FDR before Truman became vice president. People like who was, go back to Henry Wallace. Henry Wallace talked about the century of the common man, and you know, when the left wing with the New Deal was trying to reach out to the to the lower class of men, and people like I just want to say like Theodore Roosevelt, 30 years, 25 years prior, try to appeal to the common man, the blue collar man. But today, the left wing of society is more of a is a creation, or I should say, is more seen to be consist of two factions: the latte drinking crowd in in the eastern seaboard and in the west coast states, are those radicals on college campuses across North America. So that the left wing male, the heterosexual male, no longer has a home within the Democratic Party. Doesn't have a home within the Green Party at there or any other left wing party. And it's so evident after you witness the rise of the post Clinton White House. I think 1992 would be the starting point where men have left the Democratic Party. So, what are the solutions to this? Because it's evident because of the podcast masculinity crowd and the manosphere red pill and its gateway to fascism and its tendency to go so right that it's no longer is beyond the classic conservative trope, is now going to let's vote for certain candidates or favor certain policies that would hinder the rights of others. You got one talking about, well, if we get rid of the right to vote. You got one say, well, let's bring back, let's force, let's have, I forgot the other one. Let's lower the age of consent back to 13, and you got conversations that's very scary in that regard. And then you got some who said, you got some red pillars so to a point that they want to commit genocide to certain groups of people, whether that's in the LGBTQ community or a particular racial group. But like I said, let me talk about the solutions to this. And I did produce two videos, or I should say 3 videos about this, and you can click on the upper right hand side to see those videos, what I think should be done. But that's mainly is in the African American perspective. But let me broaden this appeal to to the everyday person, to all of us in Western society. You see, back in the interwar period, we had the Great Depression, and during the Great Depression, there was a lot of divorces, children and wives being left in the plain states of Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, being left by their husbands so they can find jobs in California, and then down here in the South, especially in the African American world, you had black men that left for the West Coast or to the northern states and left children and their wives down here. But let me stick to the main point. And because of that, you saw an uptick of divorces. You saw an uptick of, especially in the white America, you start seeing the uptick of divorces and broken homes. And it created the same situation where, sadly, sadly, we're seeing today with the Democratic backsliding. And this is the reason why we needed to create um, a similar program of the New Deal. Um, Programs similar to programs like the work program, the works projects administration, or things like the civil works administration, something that would put men back to young men back to work in certain projects for with high paying jobs and so forth. Now I know this is not the everything approach, but also what also needs to happen, and I'm also going to add on another thing um that would help my case on this. After World War II, a similar issue had occurred among young men, and it was the juvenile delinquency. You saw the same conditions, similar conditions, even though it's on a smaller scale during the late 40s and up until the mid 1950s. And even then, the 34th president of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, helped create the Interstate Highway Program that put a lot of young men of the working class to work, and that did help reduce crime, in white America, I'm saying, that would reduce crime and poverty in certain locations in America, and had a good upward mobility. And that's what we need now. And plus though, I think though, what is also is needed to, for policy is also to reinstate a couple things that was done in the 1980s. For one, we need to have the fairness doctrine, and the reason why I'm saying we need to restate the fairness doctrine because of the nonsensical political divide. It fed into the gender divide, and I'm not going to talk about that more. I'm talking that's for a less extent. And we need to address the education system, right? Between 1978 and 1982, higher education was 50-50 among between men and women. I do believe that in order to really to fix that problem, and I'm sorry, I'm hearing something outside as I'm speaking. That's why I misspoke. Something distracted me for a minute, but nonetheless, I believe that if we create a policy where licenses can be gained from high school and junior colleges for blue collar careers and vocation, rather than trying to pump everybody into this world of higher academia, I believe a lot of men would have a better chance. A lot of young men have a better chance of employment, a better chance of increased lifestyle. And yes, let me say this too. And because of this increased lifestyle and increased money flow and all that, I think he will have the better options later down the road of meeting somebody for a potential romantic relationship and creating families. See, the reason why families are not being created is because housing is not at the optimal level for most young adults. That needs to be addressed too. What also needs to be addressed is something also happened in the 1980s that needs to be eradicated, or should be not eradicated, but should be reintroduced, is mental health. Because of the Reagan administration's war against the mental health hospitals, the mental health institutions, because of that, it puts a stigma on of men seeking therapy, men seeking assistance when it comes to being counseled. We got to reverse that trend and make sure, that we in our population have been a well balanced community with men who are well balanced emotionally, spiritually, and further down the line financially. And that what needs to happen. I may not have all the answers, but I think that that's some of the answers that should happen on the outwardly level to address these grievances. And I think with all that, I think that could destroy or find it unnecessary. If a lot more men, I'll say it like this. I say it a better way. I'll say it in a better way. If men were happier, if young men were more happier, more fulfilled, more in tune with their confidence, with their manhood, with their place in society. The masculine podcast industrial complex will cease to exist. The red pill philosophy will cease to exist. The manosphere, MGTOW, MRA, passport bros, anything you can see, SYSBM, anything you see, all these silly gender war acronyms that you see will no longer exist, will be no longer needed. It's going to be policy that's going to change the mindset. And because of policy, you're going to have to change the culture. And that's what needs to happen. As I take this avenue, let me address another issue. Let me address another issue that I find problematic about the left. And there's one thing she said in the video that or I should say on her list, that the left not speaking to men. And this is where I'm going to address FD Signifier. And I'm going to do a little bit of a light work on FD Signifier. FD Signifier of aloofness. His aloofness, his his way of not to empathize with the heterosexual male shows he does not care about his general constituent, especially the African American constituent. The problem with FD Signifier and his philosophy is that not everything is rooted in the classic left right socialist versus fascist type of way. And also the other problem with FD Signifier's argument is this. He's trying to make this more about the sexuality rather than the trying to go against heteronormity, or should I say go against the idea of trying to go against the heterosexual male as that's seen as a threat to the LGBTQ community, which is not the case. We need better programs. We need better solutions to remedy this problem. And FD Signifier, in my opinion, and I think in most people in this space, has been a disservice. And yes, FD Signifier has failed his fellow, I don't know how I say that, his fellow black man. Anyway, this is Big J Triple X. Like, share, subscribe. Please donate at BuymeaCoffee.com/Big J. That link is in the description box. Let's change the culture. Let's create policy that will help men out, help young men and boys out. And the more you help boys out, the more safety girls are. That's what needs to happen. Because of the manosphere, because of the red pill community, young girls are going to be potential targets for harassment, violence, and God knows else. So let's start changing policy so we can change the mindset. I'm out. Thank you for having me.